Hello and welcome. You know how it is. We've all been there. You set a big, exciting goal, you're full of motivation, and then a few weeks later, it just kind of fizzles out. But what if the real secret to making big changes that actually stick wasn't about some massive, heroic effort? What if it was about something way, way smaller? Today, we're going to dig into the amazing ideas from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, and find out how super tiny changes can lead to some seriously remarkable results. So let's just start with the question we've all asked ourselves. Why is it so incredibly hard to stick with the changes we want to make? Whether it's a New Year's resolution or just a random burst of inspiration. We aim for this huge transformation, but the momentum, it just never seems to last. Well, it turns out we might be looking at the whole idea of change completely backwards. Okay, to really get this, let's use a brilliant analogy from the book. I want you to picture an ice cube sitting on a cable in a really cold room. The thermometer reads 28 degrees. Now you start to slowly raise the heat. But at 28 degrees, what happens? Absolutely nothing. That ice cube is just sitting there, solid as a rock. Okay, now the room warms up to 29 degrees, then 30, then 31. You've been putting in the work, right? Degree by tiny degree. But from the outside, it looks like you've made zero progress. The ice cube is, well, it's still an ice cube. And this right here is the exact moment most of us give up, because we can't see any results for all our effort. And then you hit 32 degrees. That single 1-degree shift, which feels no different than all the ones that came before it, suddenly unlocks a massive change. The ice starts to melt. See, the breakthrough wasn't because of that final degree. It was the result of all the work, all the other degrees that came before it. And that, right there, is the secret to understanding habits. So, with that whole ice cube moment fresh in our minds, here's the game plan for this explainer. First, we'll unpack that idea of the breakthrough point. Then we're going to figure out the real reason we usually fail. From there, we'll lift the hood and look at something called the habit loop. And then, this is the fun part, we get practical with some powerful tools. How to design your world, how to use the 2-minute rule to just crush procrastination, and finally, we'll talk about the golden rule, consistency over perfection. All right, so that ice cube isn't just about melting. It's really our first big idea, the incredible power of compounding. The most powerful results in our lives are almost always delayed. Mastery isn't about one giant effort. It's about having the patience to just keep going, even when you can't see the results of your work yet. And hey, if the ice cube analogy doesn't click for you, here's another amazing one. The San Antonio Spurs, the basketball team, actually have this quote in their locker room. It's about a stonecutter who might hammer away at a rock 100 times without a single crack showing. But then, on the 101st hit, it splits in two. Now, we all know it wasn't that last hit alone that did it. It was all the pressure that built up from the hits that came before. That's exactly what your tiny habits are doing. They're building pressure. So if compounding is this amazing force, why do we fail so often? Well, it's because our focus is completely in the wrong place. We are obsessed with the finish line, with the goal, when we should be obsessed with the process that's going to get us there. Now, this slide is huge because it points out two critical mistakes we make. First, we get fixated on goals, like, say, lose 20 pounds, instead of focusing on systems, like the daily habit of eating a healthy breakfast. The cool thing is, if you just commit to the system, the results kind of take care of themselves. But the second mistake is even deeper. We try to change the outcome before we change who we are. The real goal isn't just to read a book, it's to become a reader. Every tiny habit you do is like casting a vote for the type of person you want to become. So how do we actually cast those votes? To get that, we need to look under the hood at the engine that drives pretty much all of our behaviors, the good ones and the bad ones. It's this simple, predictable 4-step model that runs our lives on autopilot. And there it is, the habit loop. Cue, craving, response, reward. Now, this isn't something that happens every now and then. This feedback loop is running constantly, every single moment, scanning your world and shaping your actions without you even thinking about it. Let's break this down with a super simple example. The cue is the trigger. You see a plate of cookies on the kitchen counter. The craving is that motivational spark. Ooh, you want that sweet, sugary taste. The response is the action. You grab a cookie and eat it. And the reward is that satisfying sugar rush that basically tells your brain, hey, that was good, remember this. Let's do that again. So if you want to change a habit, you have to jump in at one of these 4 spots. Which brings us to our first really practical tool. Instead of trying to rely on willpower, which, let's be honest, comes and goes, you can just become the architect of your own world. You can basically rig the game in your own favor just by controlling the cues around you.
I just love this quote because it's so empowering, right? It flips the whole script. You don't have to be at the mercy of your surroundings. In fact, a lot of the time, our habits change just based on the room we're in and what's sitting in front of us. So if you consciously design your world, you can make good habits the easiest path to take.
This is such a perfect example. A hospital cafeteria wanted people to drink more water. They didn't put up posters or give a lecture on health. All they did was add bottles of water to every single drink station in the place. And the result? Water sales shot up by over 25%, and soda sales went down. They didn't try to change people's minds, they just changed the default choice. That's the secret sauce. And this is why those small environmental tweaks are such a big deal. Your day is filled with these little things that Clear calls decisive moments. Think of them as tiny forks in the road. The choice to leave your running shoes right by the front door. The choice to put the junk food up on a high shelf where you can't even see it. Each tiny decision kind of sets the direction for what happens next. And they all stack up to create either a really productive day or a really frustrating one. Okay, but what happens when the problem isn't your environment, but it's that little battle going on inside your own head? We all know that feeling of just not wanting to start. Well, for that, we've got another incredibly simple but shockingly effective tool.
And here it is, the 2-minute rule. The whole idea is that any new habit you're trying to build has to be shrunk down into something that takes less than 2 minutes to do. Now, why would you do that? Because at the very beginning, the goal isn't to get a great result. The goal is just to master the art of showing up. You have to establish the habit first before you can ever make it better. And this is what that looks like in the real world. Run 3 miles becomes just put on my running shoes. That's it. Read a whole chapter becomes read 1 page. The whole point is to make starting so ridiculously easy that you literally can't say no. This becomes your on-ramp, your gateway to the bigger habit you're trying to build. Okay, so we've got our tools, but none of them are going to work without our final golden rule of changing our behavior, and that's putting consistency above everything else. This is the brilliant paperclip strategy. There was this young stockbroker who would start every single day with 2 jars on his desk. One was filled with 120 paperclips, and the other one was empty. After every single sales call he made, he would move 1 paperclip from the full jar to the empty one, and he wouldn't stop working until that second jar was full. It made his progress visual, it made it immediate, and it was just so satisfying. It's a simple little trick to track your habits and stay on course. But what happens when life gets in the way? You get sick, there's an emergency, your perfect streak gets broken. The most important rule of all is this one: never miss twice. Look, anyone can miss one day. It happens. It's the person who gets right back on track the next day who actually succeeds. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice? Well, that's the start of a new unwanted habit. So let's bring this all home. The real message here is that tiny atomic changes can lead to incredible results because over time, they shift your very identity. So I'm going to leave you with this question. Forget about the massive goal for just a second. What is the one single 2-minute habit you can start today that casts a vote for the person you ultimately want to become?